Welcome to the History and Pixels channel. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss more videos like this one. The Iron Maiden, one of the most infamous torture instruments of the Middle Ages, consisted of a metallic structure shaped like a sarcophagus with the interior filled with sharp spikes. When the victim was placed inside and the door was closed, the spikes pierced the body without hitting vital organs, prolonging the suffering. The chevalet, or little horse, in French, was a widely used torture instrument during the Middle Ages and the Inquisition. Its name comes from its resemblance to a wooden horse. The victim was forced to sit or ride on this structure with their legs hanging and often with weights attached to their ankles, the purpose being to inflict extreme pain and cause bodily harm, often resulting in permanent injuries or even death. Used as punishment for crimes like blasphemy and theft, the torture coffin functioned as follows. Convicted individuals were forced to stay inside the mobile cell for days until death. Extremely tight, the cages were hung in public squares where the victims suffered exposure to the sun and attacks from animals that fed on the still-living body. The bronze bull, a method of execution used in ancient Greece, is attributed to the tyrant Phalaris of Acragas. The condemned was placed inside a hollow metal bowl which was heated from below with fire until the victim was burned alive. To intensify the cruelty, openings transformed the screams into sounds resembling a bull's bellow. The torture saw, a macabre instrument used during the Middle Ages to punish and terrify, saw the victim suspended upside down, ensuring blood flow to the brain to prolong consciousness while being sawn in half, usually starting at the groin. This cruel method was applied in cases of treason, heresy, or crimes considered heinous. The heretic's fork, an instrument of torture used during the Inquisition especially between the 15th and 17th centuries, fastened to the neck with a leather strap and had sharp ends pointing up and down, preventing any head movement. It was used to force confessions or as punishment for those accused of heresy. This brutal device was used to initiate the punishment of women, liars, and homosexuals. The pear-shaped apparatus was inserted into women's vaginas, homosexuals' anuses, and blasphemers' mouths. To make the 4 metal petals open, the victim only had to twist a screw. The pear could tear the flesh as it expanded and mutilate the orifices of those who received it. This engraving depicts a historical execution method known as trampling by elephants, widely practiced in South and Southeast Asia, especially in India. This method involved the use of trained elephants to crush convicts, often under the command of a handler. This type of punishment served as a public spectacle, demonstrating both the ruler's power and the strength of the animals. This method, widely used in Europe, was known as the torture wheel, a medieval instrument used for brutal punishments. The victim was tied to the wheel, which rotated while executioners broke their bones with hammers. Often the mutilated body was left exposed on the wheel as a public warning. It was reserved for crimes deemed the most serious. Bamboo torture was a cruel practice used during wartime, particularly in Asia. In this method, the victim was tied above growing bamboo shoots. Bamboo, known for its rapid growth rate, would slowly pierce through the victim's body, causing severe injuries and an extremely painful death over the course of days. The neck collar of thorns, a torture instrument used in medieval Europe for punishment and humiliation, was made of metal and equipped with sharp spikes. It was fitted around the victim's neck, causing intense pain with every movement. This method was used both to discipline prisoners and to subjugate religious or political opponents. The waist chop was an extreme form of execution used in Imperial China, primarily during the Ming Dynasty, as punishment for serious crimes like treason. The victim was cut in half at the waist, resulting in either instant or prolonged death depending on the executioner's skill. This method was a brutal demonstration of power and intimidation, often carried out publicly to reinforce imperial authority. This object is known as the thumbscrew, an instrument of torture widely used during the Middle Ages and later periods. It was designed to crush the thumbs or other fingers of the victim. The mechanism worked by turning the central screw, which gradually applied pressure, causing extreme pain and, in many cases, completely crushing the bones. This painting depicts the punishment known as dismemberment by horses, one of the most brutal executions in history. In this method, the victim's limbs were tied to horses that pulled in opposite directions until the body was completely torn apart. Practiced mainly in Europe and reserved for treason or crimes considered extreme, dismemberment served as a public spectacle to instill fear and obedience. Foot roasting was a torture method used in various periods, particularly during the Inquisition, to inflict extreme pain and extract confessions or information. The victim's feet were tied and exposed to hot coals or an intense heat source. The process caused severe burns, blisters, and in prolonged cases, carbonized tissues. Pena culiae was an extraordinarily cruel and rare punishment in ancient Rome, applied to those convicted of parricide, killing a close relative, usually a father. The condemned was sewn alive into a leather sack alongside living animals considered ill omens, such as a dog, a snake, a rooster, and a monkey. Once sealed, the sack was thrown into a river or the sea, ensuring a slow death by drowning and suffocation. The condemned were sent naked and without any kind of weapon to the arena and had to defend themselves against the chosen beast to try to save their lives. This image shows what remains of a lead foot, an execution instrument used especially for forced drownings, common in naval punishments and pirate trials. The condemned had weights fixed to their feet before being thrown into the sea. This method ensured a quick but cruel death and was also used to dispose of bodies in clandestine executions. The torture chair, an instrument of punishment used in medieval Europe to inflict extreme pain and extract confessions, was made of wood or iron and equipped with hundreds of sharp spikes that pierced the victim's body when they were tightly strapped in. Often the chair was heated to intensify the agony. This device was primarily used to punish those accused of heresy, witchcraft, or treason. This image shows the guillotine, one of history's most iconic execution devices. Introduced in France during the French Revolution in 1792, the guillotine was designed to provide a quick and humane execution. Its sharp blade descended rapidly, instantly severing the head from the body. During the Reign of Terror led by Robespierre, the guillotine became a symbol of revolutionary justice, executing thousands including nobles, politicians, and even revolutionary leaders. Pressing by weight was mainly used in Europe and the United States during the 16th and 17th centuries. The victim was laid on the ground with a board placed over their body, and heavy weights were gradually added until the condemned died from asphyxiation or internal crushing. This method was applied both for punishment and to force crime confessions. A famous case was that of Giles Corey, accused of witchcraft during the Salem trials in 1692. This punishment method became historically famous under the Inquisition tribunal. The stake was used as a humiliating means to burn the condemned publicly. Burnings were conducted collectively with 3 or 4 people at a time. The condemned were forced to wear wet sulfur-coated robes to prevent death from smoke inhalation. This ensured that the person would die by burning. In medieval Europe, boiling was sporadically used as a capital punishment for counterfeiters, poisoners, and traitors. The condemned was submerged in boiling liquid, causing a slow and excruciatingly painful death. The act served not only as punishment but also as a warning to spectators. This image depicts the Judas cradle, a medieval torture instrument used to extract confessions or punish crimes. The victim was forced to sit on the sharp point of the structure, with the body's weight increasing the pain. Bound by ropes, they were unable to move, prolonging the suffering. The piquet was a simple yet extremely painful torture method used primarily during the medieval period. The victim was forced to remain in an uncomfortable position, usually with one leg tied to a suspended rope while the other rested on the ground over a sharp stake or pointed object. A man wearing a kang, a punishment device used in Imperial China and other Asian cultures, consisted of a heavy wooden frame fastened around the condemned's neck, restricting movement and making it impossible to eat without assistance. The kang was often used for public humiliation, with the person's name and crime written on the wood. The condemned were exposed in public places. Featured in the series Game of Thrones, rat torture was a cruel method used to extract confessions or punish individuals, recorded in various historical periods especially during wars or brutal interrogations. In this method, a rat was placed inside a container like a bucket attached to the victim's body. The container was then heated with fire, forcing the rat to escape by digging into the victim's body, causing excruciating internal injuries. The breast ripper was a medieval torture instrument specifically designed for women accused of crimes such as adultery, blasphemy, or witchcraft. Made of iron, The device had claws that were heated and used to tear or mutilate the victim's breasts, causing extreme pain and often leading to death by infection or hemorrhage. This is a shame mask, an instrument of punishment and humiliation used mainly in Europe during the 17th and 18th centuries. These masks were made of iron and designed grotesquely or exaggeratedly to ridicule the wearer. They were used to publicly punish individuals accused of gossiping, slander, or other disruptive behaviors in society at the time. The practice of drowning women accused of witchcraft was common during witch trials in medieval and early modern Europe. The process often involved throwing the accused into a river or lake, tied or weighted down. The brutal logic behind this test was simple. If the woman floated, she was guilty of rejecting the pure waters. In such cases, she would be retrieved and executed by other means. This engraving depicts execution by impalement, one of the most brutal punishments in history, used primarily during the Middle Ages and by Vlad the Impaler. The condemned were forced to sit on a sharp stake which was then raised slowly, piercing the body. This method, designed to cause an agonizing death, served as a public warning, commonly seen in conflicts and political repression. The image illustrates the use of the pillory, a public punishment method widely employed in Europe and its colonies during the 17th and 18th centuries. The condemned were secured by the neck and hands in a wooden structure, immobilized and exposed to public humiliation. Spectators often mocked, threw objects, or insulted the condemned, increasing their psychological and physical suffering. One of the most utilized methods in Europe as punishment was execution with a single blow to the nape to behead the victim. Initially, this process was carried out by the executioner wielding a sword, but during the Middle Ages axes and chopping blocks began to be used. Additionally, a headrest for the condemned was implemented to facilitate decapitation. Later on, this event had an upgrade, so to speak, in the late 1700s, gaining popularity due to the French Revolution. A device known as the thumbscrew, an instrument of torture used primarily during the Middle Ages and early modern era, had a mechanism consisting of two wooden or metal bars equipped with sharp pins or nails tightened by screws to crush the victim's fingers. This practice inflicted extreme pain, crushed bones and tissue, and often caused permanent deformities. This engraving illustrates the use of the strappado, a torture method widely employed during the Inquisition and medieval periods. The condemned was suspended by their wrists, usually tied behind their back, and abruptly hoisted upward, causing joint dislocations and extreme pain. In some variations, weights were added to the ankles to intensify the suffering. The torture rack was one of the most cruel and emblematic instruments of the Middle Ages and the Inquisition period. The victim was tied by their wrists and ankles to rolling bars which slowly stretched the body. This process caused joint dislocations, muscle and tendon ruptures, resulting in excruciating pain and permanent damage.